I'd like to ask the Minister for Enterprise if he will make a statement on the Manx National Heritage decision to remove the Manx Museum Folk Gallery.
Minister for Enterprise, Mr Skelly, to reply.
Good morning, Dr. I'm happy to give an answer on behalf of Manx National Heritage. The Lower Folk Gallery at the Manx Museum was created in the late 1930s and was modified in the 1950s. However, it is no longer fit for purpose. Many of the stories it told originally are now told elsewhere on the island, most notably Cregnish. The current displays do not meet modern standards of display and interpretation. The average life of a gallery in museums is 20 years. M&H recognises that the stage sets in the Lower Folk Gallery have lasted far longer than intended, and as a result, many people have a strong emotional attachment to them. M&H intends to replace them and will give plenty of warning before the gallery is closed for refurbishment. In addition, the gallery has been 3D scanned to provide a digital archive. Options to redisplay some of the current elements at other sites are being examined. In view of the fact that there are already displays on the ground floor of the museum dedicated to Manx social history, and that Cregnish offers authentic buildings of the period, as well as limited space currently given to the TT and motorsport heritage, trustees supported a proposal on the 26th of July 2018 to dedicate the gallery in the basement to the island's TT and motorsport heritage stories. M&H's duty as the island's National Heritage Agency is to celebrate and showcase the heritage of the Isle of Man in all its forms. The TT story and its impact on the island is now a fundamental part of culture of the Isle of Man, for which it is recognised the world over. The TT story is not told or celebrated in the island's National Museum, and the various temporary exhibitions M&H has produced over the years show that as a rich social and cultural history. Therefore, the planned TT gallery will be as much about the social and cultural impacts of the TT and the people who race it, watch it, marshal it and support it. It will be about people and not just the machines. M&H has been actively collecting a range of TT and motorsport material for at least 20 years. These collections range from oral history interviews with fans to armbands worn by volunteer marshals. The new gallery will leave personal stories using the collections against a backdrop of film and sound. The gallery in its present format is currently expected to close to the public in January 2020, and the plan for the new gallery is to be open in time for the summer 2022. Gurmai.
Supplementary question, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Mr President. Thank you, Minister, for that detailed answer. Is the Minister aware of how unpopular the decision has been amongst local residents? Did Manx National Heritage consider improving what they already had and consulting with local people before announcing the removal?
Minister to reply.
Yes, good morning, Dr. Yes, absolutely. I'm sure many members have had representation with regards to this change by Manx National Heritage. Clearly, it's an outdated display, static display, and considerations about upgrading it, modernising it, I presume, were discussed by the trustees. And I think we have to recognise, as a charitable trust, they are an arm's length organisation of government, and they are the custodians of our heritage. Whilst I would agree it should be modernised, it could be considered to be redisplayed elsewhere. I do support Manx National Heritage interest in the TT, and on that basis we're very keen as a Department for Enterprise, having the responsibility of promoting the TT, to work with them to promote the TT as part of our heritage as well.
Supplementary. Honourable Member for Douglas Central, Mrs Corlett.
Thank you, Mr President. Would the Minister agree that the wider issue here is an existential one, and that is what better represents the island, its folk life or the TT? And to argue that you want the former to go to Cregnish is a little specious, to say the least, when we're talking about what is effectively our National Museum in Douglas, which should have a place for all of this under its own roof. Cregnish is not the easiest place to pop into. And you could argue if Craignish is the first place that fulfills this mandate, that it is equally as static a display as the Folk Museum.
Now, I had a statement. I'm not sure about a question, however. Mr. Skelly.
Good morning, Dr. Yes, I think the honourable member's statement is, or question was about Craignish being a living museum, which we all recognise, and one of the 14 sites that Manx National Heritage does have, a really valued site, and I think it was established and endorsed by the Irish Folklore Commission back in the 1940s when they recorded the last native speakers right there in Craignish. So highly valued site for Manx National Heritage, I'm sure we'd all agree. But I think what the Honourable Member is trying to say is, should there be a static display in the National Museum and remain there? And of course that's part of, I believe, a petition that's already open. All I would say there is that I would hope that the trustees would actually take that on board and consider that option, because we, as the Department for Enterprise, come back to being the promoters of TT, I do believe that should also be recognised and highlighted in addition. And we've clearly signalled our intention with regards to the redevelopment of the grandstand. There is an ideal location right there to promote TT heritage, should we get sufficient support at that particular point.
Honourable Member Miss Edge.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to ask the Minister, I'm quite certain when he commented recently with regards to the redevelopment of the grandstand site that a museum was possibly mentioned, but is his department already funding any elements of TT memorabilia in the motorcycle museum, etc.? And I'm just concerned that we're getting rid of what is our folklore within the centre of Douglas, where people coming from the island, we're promoting cruise ships, and they walk to these places. I'm just very concerned that we're replacing our folklore, our history, that's our nation, before we're taking that away and we're promoting the TT above that.
Mr. Skelly.
I think the question there was, as a department, are we assisting in funding any memorabilia? No, I don't believe we are. Facilitating in terms of supporting the promotion of TT, be in the form of the event and the heritage. Yes, we would absolutely want to be behind that. But I do absolutely take on board the sentiment, and I guess we'd probably want to think of our national poet, T.E. Brown, who said to preserve whatever is left of our ancient heritage, and clearly this display is part of that, so I'd absolutely recognise that.
Supplementary, Mr. Moorhouse.
Thank you, Mr. President. I fully recognise the importance of Craignish, but whole-scale removal of this gallery is significant. Is there any possibility that elements of the display, such as the cottage, could be retained? It appears to be a structurally independent area.
Minister to reply.
Good admired. I'm not too sure if anyone's been there recently in the last few years at this particular site, and in many ways it's great to actually highlight it, because probably forgotten in many people's eyes. The location and I'm led to believe the state of repair of the basement is not great, and clearly from the fact that, as I said in the original answer, 1950s was the last time they modified this and upgraded it. That's an awful long time, so I think we've got what you would expect in a 70-year-old display, quite frankly. So I think honourable members are making a point of how important this is to our heritage, and I certainly accept that, and what we want to do is to ensure that the trustees do hear that too.
Supplementary, Mr. Hooper.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think the Minister has just alluded to this in his last statement. Would the Minister agree that Manx National Heritage is an independent organisation? They're independent of the Department, they're independent of government, and the risk that independent arm's-length organisations make decisions which politicians don't like, which people may find unpopular, is one of the biggest risks when looking to separate into more arm's-length functions, as has been routinely proposed recently in Timbledon. This is a risk we have to be aware of, and something members really need to learn to understand and accept. Thank you.
Mr Skelly.
Yes, Gurmai, I thank the Honourable Member for his question. Yes, indeed, arm's length is the terminology. Charitable trust is what Manx National Heritage is, and it was purposely separated from government for that very reason. Of course, we have gone round, I was thinking it was 14 sites. Of course, there are 15 sites that Manx National Heritage has now, which of course is the old police station in Castletown, which I think their fund budget is 4.4 million, of which they need to spread over all those sites, maintaining them for what is a serious national asset for the island.
Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr President. Is the Minister aware of a petition of some 2,899 signatures collated by Lynn Mather, who has called for the retention of the gallery? And would the Minister undertake, in his dialogues with the Manx Museum, to ensure that there is an element of folklore that is retained in Douglas? Obviously, you can come to Cregnish for a fantastic immersive experience, but in terms of making sure that that is a highly part of visible Manx history in town, because, being frank, there are plenty of places you can go in this island to see TT and its history and its folklore. That the folklore element, I think, is something that we need to retain in town.
Similar sentiment to other members, fully accept that. And I too would say yes, Cregnish, who's currently going through some investment at the moment in maintaining it, and the cost we should not underestimate in retaining old national buildings. But what I would say is that TT, as well as the folk life, should actually be promoted. And for that, I'd just say that we, as Department for Enterprise, would like to work with Manx National Heritage as their sponsoring department.
Take a final supplementary in this subject, Mrs Corlett.
Thank you, Mr President. Would the Minister agree that the Trust is an arm's length organisation, but that it is accountable to the Manx public and should listen to them? Thank you.
Minister.
I'm sure they're listening right now and take that on board. Good mind.